Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Early Edge, brought to you by BetMGM, the sports book born in Vegas. What an incredible Monday we have. We've got 2 Monday night football games. We got super high stakes with the Mets and the Braves and the Diamondbacks and the MLB playoffs. Eric David in the chat, he says, good morning, fam. Good morning to you, Eric and Rick and Fantasy Life and Brian Smith, Brad Betts, Liddy. Hit the like button, everyone, if you would. Let's take a look at the recap screen before we bring on the stars of the show. It's a 2-pager. You know that because it's a Monday. We got to get through a lot of these picks. Before we get to page 2, shout out to Patrick McDonald, who snuck onto the show and just started hitting every bet he put out. We got check marks. We got a lot of plus money there, a lot of X's too. I didn't help this recap screen at all. Rams +3, San Francisco Giants first 5 money line didn't get there. Let's go to page 2 of this. We go 12-12 overall, but don't forget about the plus money plays that we ended up hitting. Listen, Mackenzie Brooks, nice bounce back there. 2-0. Danny Brasco, 2-0. He has been red hot. Like he said, he's been a little cold in UFC. He has been maybe the best, if not one of the best SportsLine cappers in the NFL. He is crushing it every time he comes on the show and every time he puts out a pick on SportsLine. So big congrats to him. Let's bring on the stars of the show. Let's bring him in right now. We've got an all-star team on a Monday. We've got Larry Hartstein. We got the Sniper looking like ready to give out some takes. I love that. And then, of course, we have Mike McClure. Pre-show, we were talking about Mike McClure's first quarter bet on Alabama, the no sweat. He's been specializing in those first quarters. But I want to turn the page, Mike. We'll start with you to the NFL. So much to react to. I'm curious, what's your, I guess, the thing you want to boldface about yesterday in the NFL?
I'll start with my team that I like the most, obviously the Kansas City Chiefs. Losing Rashee Rice likely for the season, just a pretty big deal. I think they were incredibly fortunate. They got a beat up version of the Chargers there, but this team's got some major concerns going forward. As far as the Bills and Ravens last night, the Ravens reminded us they're an incredibly good football team. And it's difficult to stop the run. And I think Buffalo is a little undersized defensively. They match up well in certain matchups, but in this one, I don't think they're going to be able to stop the run. And I think there's 3 or 4 teams in the NFL that we think of as being good playoff teams that will struggle to stop the run like that. So I think the Ravens have to be near the top of everyone's power rankings right now. Because I really think that they might be the best team in the NFL.
Yeah, especially with Kansas City, taking a step back a little bit because of the injuries. Larry, I went into that Buffalo Ravens game thinking this could be a preview of and I don't want to discredit the Chiefs. I know what Mahomes does in the playoffs, so just forgive me here. But I thought the Bills Ravens was maybe going to be a preview of the AFC Championship. And the Bills really were like stymied at every turn, particularly on offense. I thought Josh Allen throwing a lot of 50-50 balls, Joe Brady, the design of some of these plays, I was just kind of like up in arms with. But your reaction to that and just Sunday in general?
Yeah, it looks like a massive beatdown. But if you look at that game, Buffalo was getting back into it. They had the big turnover. It could have been an interesting game. But yeah, these teams should both be in the mix at the end. How about your Commanders and the Rookie of the Year? I mean, that guy's running away with that. And the Minnesota Vikings, just going up there, taking care of business, jumped on them, got out. And they play the New York Jets in London next Sunday. And maybe no team as disappointing as the Jets yesterday. Some beefs going on between the coach and the quarterback, a pathetic offensive display. When you hold the guy to -7 yards passing in the first half and you cannot win that game, very embarrassing, because this is when the Jets needed to rack up a lot of wins. The schedule was so easy, and now they could be looking at 2-3 against Minnesota next week.
Yeah, they looked really bad yesterday. Sniper, your Bears got a win, and so I don't know if you want to respond to that, but I do want you to set the stage because you're about to give out some MLB picks. Just real quick, set the stage for those of us that maybe are so invested in the NFL and college football that they don't even realize what's going on in the MLB. And an incredibly, in my opinion, unusual situation taking place today with a doubleheader.
Yeah, first off, this side, 5-0 Hoosiers. Got to get and hey, on Thursday I told you guys to play the Bears in Survivor, so you could have gotten them out of the way. But anyway, so here's what's going on. Because of Hurricane Helene, the Wednesday and Thursday scheduled games between the Mets and Braves in Atlanta had to be canceled. They're playing a doubleheader today. It's interesting because the Diamondbacks need one team to sweep. and the Mets and Braves both get in if they just simply split the doubleheader. So the hunch here is whoever wins the first game is going to totally dial it back and rest all their regulars in the second game. So they're probably going to split, and the Diamondbacks are going to not make the playoffs. And both the Mets and the Braves are going to celebrate today, although it'll be a very, very quick celebration because the playoffs start tomorrow. The Braves are locked into the 5 seed or missing the playoffs. So what I think is going to happen is the Braves are going to be the 5, the Mets are going to be the 6, and the Diamondbacks are going to miss the playoffs.
Yeah, I hope you're wrong, because I don't know if people remember this, but back during the All-Star break, we were picking some futures. Mike, you were on Houston. I think that was like your big bet, Houston to win their division, and you were getting plus money for it. Of course, that cashed, and I think we kind of all knew that was going to cash like a month ago. It was that easy of a play. But I had the Diamondbacks to win the World Series at 60-1, and my thought was, well, they can sneak into the playoffs, and once they get into the playoffs, we're looking at a team that has done it before. But so now that ticket was looking really good like 2 or 3 weeks ago, at least good to like get in the playoffs and maybe have some fun, win a series or two. But I think you're right. I think the Diamondbacks will be on the outside looking in after today. But let's talk about some bets finally. Sniper, everybody, we're going to get to some NFL bets, by the way. But Sniper, we're going to start with Major League Baseball.
Yeah, okay. So first off, the lines for the second game are not posted, basically, I believe, because of what I just said.
Yeah.
I mean, the Mets have already said Luis Severino is going to start the second game. But if they win, they're not going to pitch him. The Braves are going to start Chris Sale in the second game if they need him. But if they win the first game, they're not going to pitch Chris Sale. So there are no lines on the second game yet. If you want, after the first game, immediately look for the lines and jump all over the team that lost. You might have to do the run line to get the odds down a little bit, because I expect it to be heavily, heavily juiced in favor of the team that lost the first game. Speaking of that first game, I am going to go with the Braves in this one. It's minus 155. There is juice on that, but I like Schwellenbach a lot better than Tyler McGill in this one. McGill is a 6.51 ERA in his last 6 outings against the Braves. They do knock him around a lot. The Mets have had some funky travel as well. They had to fly from Atlanta to Milwaukee back to Atlanta. I don't think that's that big of a deal because teams do fly a lot in the season. It's just the Braves have been home the entire time. So I think the Braves have a little bit of an advantage there. Plus, they've won 5 of their last 6. They lost Sunday. They're ready for a bounce back here in this first game. And Spencer Schwellenbach on the mound for the Braves. He has dominated the Mets twice this season. So I like the Mets in this one. I am also going to go under 7.5 here, because while the Braves have knocked McGill around a little bit, he actually has thrown pretty well down the stretch. And the Mets are obviously going to use their good relievers behind him. He's probably not going to have that long of an outing. As I said, Schwellenbach has thrown really well against the Mets in his 2 outings this season. So I think it's probably going to be pretty low scoring. With the 7.5, even a 4-2 game, 4-3 game would get us home on this one. And I like that. I also did post a couple other plays on CBS Sports. Matt Olson over 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs. He has been absolutely crushing the ball the last 3 weeks after having an off season for most of the year. And I went under on Spencer Schwellenbach strikeouts, was 5.5 at plus money. He did dominate the Mets last time, but he only struck out 4. He's averaging less than 5 strikeouts a game in his last 5 starts. So it's a good spot for the Mets to put the ball in play a lot, even if it's right at a defender.
All right. And Mike, I do want to ask you a question here, because this does set up for the winner of game 1 losing game 2. Do you share the same sentiment, or is there some crazy big brain answer here that maybe we're not seeing?
Yeah, no, I think there's probably no scenario really. I mean, yes, it's possible a team sweeps here. It's certainly possible, but I certainly think it's very, very unlikely. I think the more interesting thing to think about is, if you're Atlanta or the Mets, do you want your division rival in the playoffs or not? I tend to actually lean towards wanting them in, as you're just super familiar with the team overall. And just in this instance that you could have travel situations, I doubt they're going to play each other later, but it's not impossible at that point. It's just less travel. There's all sorts of factors in that. But I think the interesting thing would be is if they literally just talked ahead of time and essentially threw games, because that's what I would be trying to do.
Gentlemen's agreement to just split it so we both get in. Yeah.
Well,
yeah, because you're at a massive disadvantage starting the wild card series tomorrow.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think it's that like far-fetched for the managers just to talk either before, maybe after game 1, and just share a conversation off the record. Like I think that's actually more probable than not. Matt, am I wrong?
They're not going to do that.
Okay,
I don't see.
They won't do it. They should.
They'll try to win in the sense that the players that are playing the game, they will try to win, but they're not going to play the regulars. And like I said, for example, the Braves are holding Sale back because they don't want to have to use him, because they want to start him in game 1 of the wild card series. Yeah. That's how the pitching will be set up in game 2. Is the team that loses game 1 is going to desperately need to win game 2 because it's do or die. And the team that wins game 1 is going to be setting up their pitching for the wild card series, which starts tomorrow.
Yeah. Otherwise known as a gentleman's agreement to lose the second.
Yeah. I'm just saying they're not going to say it to each other.
No. Okay. Fair enough. Okay. It might be like more of like a wink or a stare, a look. And I gotcha. Danny Brasco in the chat, he says, scheduling is truly brutal, like should be illegal, he says. Speaking of Danny Brasco, I mentioned you earlier in the show, Danny, because you have been red hot in the NFL. Speaking of the NFL, don't forget, we got 2 Monday night games tonight, and we've got an awesome BetMGM promo. We've all had our first touchdown called back before, and BetMGM is giving you a second chance with BetMGM's Pro Football Second Chance. Place any first touchdown score bet, and if your player doesn't score first but scores second, get your entire stake back in cash, no opt-in required. Here's how it works. Place a pregame straight first touchdown score bet in any NFL game. If your player scores the first touchdown in the game, win your wager as normal. If your player scores the second touchdown in the game, you'll get your stake back in cash. It's that simple. Log into BetMGM for more details. All right. Well, we were talking first quarter bets when we kicked off the show because Mike has been specializing in that, not just this season, all seasons. And I think we got another first quarter bet coming up right after this message from our partners.
CBS Sports HQ, giving you college football coverage unlike anyone else.
We're talking Big Ten.
Pre- and post-game coverage.
Are you encouraged with the way that this team responded?
Along with breaking news.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
Highlights and expert analysis.
That streak could be in jeopardy here.
Sure. What was your main takeaway from this game? How impressive was his domination?
That really changed the football game.
Let's go ahead and have some more fun.
Another wild ending.
The chaos continues.
Turn to CBS Sports HQ.
We're back on the Early Edge, brought to you by BetMGM, the sports book born in Vegas. Someone asking if Danny Brasco is going to take the under in a primetime Lions game tonight. I think my Magic 8 Ball says yes on that one, but we'll let Danny speak for himself. Speaking of the Lions game, Mike McClure, you've got a first quarter bet.
Yeah, I like the Lions in the first quarter here. I'll lay it on the spread, -0.5 point. You can find this around even money. I actually personally have played the -1.5, +112 to +116 that's out there. It's a slightly better play, but this is definitely still in play on the 0.5 point. Now, when I look at this team for the Lions, this game for the Lions, I think it's a must-win game considering the circumstances in division, the way the Minnesota Vikings have started this season. This is one in primetime on your home field that you have to take care of. And I think they're going to do it because I think they have a distinct edge on both lines of scrimmage. I really think they're going to be able to get after Geno Smith defensively, possibly create turnovers, possibly early in this one, but really looking for that home field advantage. I expect a really nice scripted drive out of the locker room from the Lions here. I think they're going to be able to run the football on Seattle. I think that Goff's going to have time to find the weapons. Sam Laporta is going to be back out there. I think he's going to help free up some of the other players on this team. So I like Detroit in a fast start here, mostly because of the home field advantage and the distinct edge on both lines of scrimmage. I think they're going to get after Seattle, and I think Seattle's going to struggle to move the football at least early. So give me the Lions here in the first quarter. Lay the 0.5 point or 1.5 if you're getting at least +109 or better.
Yeah, Mike, I agree with the Lions getting after it on offense. And I do think, I'm so glad you mentioned Sam Laporta, because I kind of think he's the key to this offense in terms of freeing things up on the outside. So really curious to see how this offense works. Before I get into my pick, which actually pertains to that game, I want to ask you a question, because there's a question in the chat regarding the other game that I guess nobody really wants to pay attention to because it's Tyler Huntley and Will Levis. Tony Pollard over 12.5 carries asks Fat Stacks. He says, I'm all over it. Titans trying to limit Levis mistakes, which of course is going to be true as much as possible. I don't want to say 12.5 is low, but it does seem just a touch low, right?
Yeah, it makes sense, especially if Miami can't maintain possession like last week. But I think this could be an interesting game offensively because Tyler Huntley brings the running threat. It seems like a breath of fresh air. Everybody's excited to play football again, especially 8-chan props are what I'm looking at because Mostert is out. Mm-hmm. Huntley has the running threat. So Devon Achane is going to get a ton of work. I think on the ground, I'm looking over on his rushing.
Yeah, I'll say this about Huntley, particularly when he was with the Ravens, which was most of his career. He looked like a solid backup quarterback. I think we're going to see a different sort of attitude from Miami with a quarterback that I think they're all invested in. Now, what does that mean for Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle? I'm not 100% sure. But speaking of receivers, I do want to mention, even though I had some X's next to my name yesterday, that Keon Coleman ladder play, which we talked about on the primetime show, it did come in. He got 51 yards. So if you hit it for his over of 26.5, if you hit 40 plus or 50 plus, all of those hit. Probably should have hit 75 plus as well, but he dropped a ball that he should have caught from Josh Allen. All right, let's get to my prop. And then, Larry, we're going to go right back to that Seattle game. I'm staying in that game as well. I'm going Kenneth Walker, longest rush, under 14.5 yards. This one's pretty simple to me from an analysis standpoint. I don't know for a fact that Kenneth Walker is going to assume the full workload in his first game back from an oblique injury. I think we could be seeing 2 or 3 less carries for him than we would normally get, and 2 or 3 more, obviously, for Zach Charbonnet. With that in mind, when I think you might be getting a couple less touches than you should be getting, particularly if the game script ends up being negative, and you're going against a really strong rush defense, I really like this number, longest rush under 14.5 yards. I think this is going to be more of a plodding running game for Seattle. I think they could have success in the air with guys like Jackson Smith and Jigba, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and the like, but I don't think the running game is really going to get off the ground, no pun intended. So give me Kenneth Walker's longest rush under 14.5 yards. Larry, I just mentioned one of the receivers that I think could enjoy some success today, JSN.
Yeah, absolutely love this kid in the spot tonight. It's so hard to run against Detroit. They are a major pass funnel, and I think Geno's going to have plenty of success. If you look at 2 of his best games each of the past 2 years, he has gone to Detroit and thrown for 320 plus yards. The only reason I'm scared of that tonight is because the Lions should be able to dominate time of possession. Seattle is missing Byron Murphy, Leonard Williams, their top 2 edge rushers. So Detroit is probably going to run a ton of plays, control the clock. But when Seattle does get it, and they hopefully will be behind, they're going to throw a lot to the slot. Jackson Smith and Jigba over 47.5 receiving yards. He had one monster game against the Patriots. I'm not saying this is going to be another 120 yards, but definitely like him to get 60 or 70. The Lions have been giving up a ton to the slot. And in general, it's just a pass funnel defense. You can choose which receiver you like. You can choose Geno Smith, but this is going to be a passing game for Seattle.
Yeah, I agree. I like JSN here quite a bit. And I'll say this for tonight's show. I'm not on tonight's show from a video camera standpoint, but I'm going to jump into the chat because I also want to give out another ladder play of the day. So if you're going to watch that show, which all of you should be watching it, especially for Danny Brasco's picks, again, he's in the chat. He also hit that Keon Coleman ladder play that we talked about. I'll drop a ladder play and maybe a first touchdown score in the chat. Mike, real quick, before we get to the recap screen, any thoughts? Because we haven't talked about the Dolphins game at all from a spread standpoint. Any thoughts one way or the other on that one? Dolphins, I think, still laying 2.5 against the Titans.
Yeah, it's fascinating because Huntley makes a big difference. You've seen the market react, and I agree with the moves there. So prior to knowing who was playing quarterback, I had a pretty decent lean on the Titans side, speaking on Monday. Now pretty strong lean on the Miami side. I like some of the plays on Tyler Huntley. I think he's definitely an upgrade from anything they've had in that quarterback room outside of Tua. And I'm not sure the gap is going to be that large because of the running factor. You know, look at that game. That team was not able to get the ball out at all against Seattle, yet they continually found a way to get into the red zone. I think that they're going to have success here. I like Huntley. Last thing I'll mention on Tyler Huntley, this is a bit of a homecoming for him. Big moment for him. He grew up in Dania Beach, very, very close to Miami here. 26 years old. We'll have a lot of friends and family in attendance for this one. Love me some Tyler Huntley here. Great
call. Yeah, very close to Miami. I lived adjacent to Dania Beach in Fort Lauderdale for 17 years. Larry, your thoughts on that game? And by the way, the Monday, we have 2 Monday night games. So I misspoke. The show isn't at 7:15. You all need to be ready to dive into that show. Make sure your alerts are set for 6:30 as the team and the crew discuss both Monday night football games. Larry, before we get to the recap screen, just quick reaction. And Sniper, I don't know if you have a home run prop. It's kind of a weird day to give one out, but I'm going to go to Larry first. Any thoughts on that Miami game, Larry?
Yeah, I think Will Levis, coming back to a place where he had maybe his best performance last season, leading a totally unlikely comeback on Monday Night Football to beat the Dolphins and kind of wreck their season because it ended up pushing them out of the division title. He has to step up tonight. I think he's in danger of being benched. One more big mistake. Mason Rudolph is sitting there. Mason Rudolph played good football down the stretch for the Steelers. I believe he's the better quarterback.
He's good. I agree.
Tennessee has enough pieces around, but they still want to see what they have with Will Levis. But I think one more pick six, one more inexplicable fumble, and it'll be lights out for him.
Levis had one amazing game where he just stuck a bunch of throws in prime time last year, and just everybody was like, "Oh my God, this guy's the new Brett Favre," and it's just not the case. I think Mason Rudolph, you at least know what you're getting from him. He has limitations with his arm strength, but I think he's a good enough game manager to get some wins for the Titans. Sniper, do we have a home run play? I'd hate for you to force it. We only have one game to discuss.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot to say it earlier. I've got Matt Olson. He's been swinging a really, really hot bat down the stretch. Tyler McGill does have some struggles historically against left-handers, and the last time they saw each other, July 27th, Olson went deep.
All right. And someone asking about the ladder play for tonight. I actually haven't given it out. I'm going to jump in the chat at 6:30 when that show starts, or at some point after 6:30 when that show starts, and drop a receiver that you may want to consider laddering. Big Cheesy says Amon-Ra St. Brown plus 120, Laporta plus 200, anytime touchdown. I don't hate those at all. I actually kind of like the number on Sam Laporta at plus 200. A lot of mouths to feed in that offense, though. I will say that. All right, let's take a look at the recap screen while Mike McClure dropping some knowledge as to Tyler Huntley's worth in the betting market over Skylar Thompson. You always want to be in the chat. You always want to hit the like button, folks, if you could, please. All right, I've got Kenneth Walker, longest rush tonight, under 14.5 yards at minus 115. The Sniper, Braves money line in game one, minus 155, and Mets Braves under 7.5 at minus 102. Again, those are game one plays. No plays for game two. Mike McClure, Lions first quarter, minus a half at minus 105. Another first quarter bet from M Squared and Larry Hartstein, Jackson, Smith, and Jigba over 47.5 receiving yards at minus 113. Well, Brad Betts just said it all. He said, great show, team. Catch you all tonight, as always. Hopefully, you will catch us tonight, as always, on this channel. Make sure you're subscribed here. Make sure you're always hitting the like button. Make sure you've got your alerts turned on, and make sure you're a subscriber to SportsLine. On behalf of Larry Hartstein, Mike McClure, the Sniper, and of course, Jake the Snake on the 1s and 2s and 9s and 10s. I'm the Counselor of Cash. This is the Early Edge. Have a great Monday, everybody. We rest our case.